Council. Today we have another video. We're going to discuss two questions. And we have here Dr. Siler, Professor of Political Science, and we're going to start off with our first question, which is, does the American dream exist? And if it does, who does it exist for? And I'm going to let her start off.
Thank you, Calvin. So, does the American dream exist, and if so, for whom? Well, historically, when we think of the American dream, we think of the whole idea of anybody being able to succeed and move up the social economic ladder, and get a house, and get a job that you stay in, like for the rest of your career, whole white picket fence, the whole thing. Now, I think we probably will all agree that that kind of thing doesn't happen very often anymore. The American dream, that mythology, is based on the nuclear family where the mother stays home and the father goes off to work. And of course, now we have, in most circumstances, at best, 2-income families. And now even that, people are still struggling to maintain because things are a lot more expensive, and there are all kinds of just obstacles to that kind of economic success. For example, to get a job these days, almost everybody has to go to college to be gainfully employed, and college is just the price of most colleges has just far exceeded the rate of inflation and is often out of reach of most people. And so that leaves us in the conundrum. You have to have you have to have a college degree to get a job, but colleges, most people can't afford a bachelor's degree anymore. So on that level, I would say the American dream exists for very few people. Those people who just, go out and take on a lot of debt to get a degree, which is most of the middle class. That means that you're left paying that debt off for most of your life, really, because most colleges require that kind of investment. So on that level, we have a serious problem with the American dream. The interesting thing about it, I always try to find some kind of silver lining in all the mess. And we might be able to sort of revive the American dream and see what kind of trade-off we have made in order to get more material things. One thing is we might need to just think in terms of quality instead of quantity, instead of quantity of material things, and go back to look at the fact that maybe what we need is not so much stuff. Maybe what we need is the luxury of free time. And so maybe it's a compromise we need to start thinking about making. And maybe we don't need the latest of this and that. Maybe, the idea of having some time to check in with people, check in with ourselves, develop our social capital. Maybe that is something that we start to revalue, and in that case, then we might be able to rehabilitate this whole concept of the American dream. Like I said, we won't have as much stuff, but if we make that dream, put it on our own terms instead of something that is imposed upon us, we make our own dream, create our own dream with imagining a life that we really want, which is something that values close relationships and that kind of thing, then we might be able to achieve that, but it's going to require sacrifice, as everything else does. It's a sacrifice. So that way we're sort of, unhinged from, well, what is the government going to allow us to have? What is this employer going to allow me to have? And we live life on our own terms. That's my silver lining out of the larger question, which is no, the traditional American dream no longer exists and is not coming back.
Oh, okay, sorry. I'm Jasmine. As far as the American dream, I would say it exists for Caucasian families and higher standing, like in a higher economic standpoint, like maybe wealthy or high middle class Caucasian families. I think the American dream never existed outside of the white race, especially just going back in history and looking at the suppression and, you know, like just all the oppression that's gone through with other races, especially African Americans, obviously. I think it won't come back unless it's for those families, because it is a lot of sacrifice. And if you look in different communities, you know, America isn't just like this middle class place. Like if you go out into poverty, like the dream never existed for them. You know, like they've always had to struggle just to make ends meet, and so the thought of college isn't necessarily there to even help better their lives, because it's not affordable to even have the white picket fence, or, you know, the average household with, or two-parent families, especially when you look into different races. Like, for example, you have like a lot of black men being locked up, and when you have that and take away the head of the home, then you leave the women to do the male and the female role, and typically most black women are being evicted now because of that. And so, like, if you just look at different statistics, you can see the American dream really isn't for everyone. So that's my take on it.
Yeah.
Okay. I know when I did this question before in class, at first I kind of I started off as the definition of it. When it says the ideal that every U.S. citizen should have an equal opportunity to achieve success and prosperity through hard work, dedication, and initiative. Now, what I tried to back up with that, when I talked about it, it's similar to the Declaration of Independence, but at the same time, at that time, it was only made for, as she said, the white citizens at that time, not for any black Americans at that time. And later on, it did, grow for, civil rights and women's rights. But nowadays it seems as though it systematically makes it unable for black African Americans to achieve that. And one thing I can add with that is, the criminal justice system is unequal. It's so much inequality in the criminal justice system, whereas piggybacking off of black males going to jail a lot and committing the same crimes as their white counterparts and getting more sentence times and getting harsher sentences. And then you have, say, a white officer doing something illegal that they're not supposed to do, and yet they're not charged, or they get a slap on the wrist and nothing happens to them. But yet when a African American does maybe the same thing, they're automatically sent to jail, or they have this high bond that they just can't pay at all. And one thing I can also add is dealing with that, the low income families with education. I say that students in urban neighborhood versus a suburban neighborhood, those students in a suburban neighborhood are more likely to succeed and go on to a higher education, because those that's living in an urban neighborhood come from low income families, and those schools, they don't have the necessary resources to to equal up to a suburban neighborhood schooling district, so that those students in an urban neighborhood don't have the right teachers, don't have the right material to be able to have that, to be able to succeed, go on to higher education, go on to colleges, and get an actual paying job. And even with that, someone in the same position, a white in the same position, how come is that they're both in the same position, but yet the white counterpart gets paid higher than the black male, or just in general? And with me, I just feel like so many things, like Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, and those type of people, so many people live up to, you know, their saying and their beliefs in the American dream. But yet so many people, I can see that now, so many people nowadays are still living up to Dr. King's speech. But all these other guys, these presidents, these white, you know, citizens back in the day, are in the books that people just automatically believe in, but yet every U.S. citizen is believing in this Dr. King speech. And I just feel that even till now, it still hasn't been fulfilled. And my question is, when will it ever be fulfilled?
I want to say something after that. I was learning in sociology, even as far as the poor go, we separate the poor into worthy and unworthy poor, and it can be as much as $1 that changes the life of someone impoverished. Like, how much as $1 can change how much they receive for, say, disability, for example, or how much they can receive for housing, or if they're accepted for housing. And I think it's kind of crazy how it's called the irritation response theory, and it's basically how the Americans, or Americans in general, think that a poor circumstance should mean we should give them less resources or less opportunity, because that should drive them more to succeed. But then again, at the same time, how do you expect someone to succeed if you're not giving them any tools to succeed with? And then you would feel comfortable or more accepting of giving someone who already has those opportunities more opportunities to keep the poor poor and to keep the wealthy wealthy. I think that's really interesting.
Good point. Yeah, very good. I mean, I agree with what both of you guys said. There are so many systematic examples of institutional discrimination that make it very, very difficult for African Americans in particular to advance socioeconomically. And in this political culture that we are in now, it seems like there are even more barriers being erected all the time. So, we need to learn how to leverage whatever political power we have to fight those kinds of things. Absolutely. It's going to be a long haul. It's going to be a struggle, and the struggle, as we've been all saying, is going to require considerable sacrifice. In the meantime, I think we need to understand what resources we have right now that we need to celebrate and appreciate. We need to value not just material things. We need to learn how to live life on our own terms, whether we're rich, whether we're poor. I think that's really the American dream is okay, I don't have a lot of money, but I can come and, use what I know to help you fix your house. You can use what you have to come help me do. It's about community. Community is the resource that we're often not allowed to remember that we have, but we do, and it's something that can be a very powerful weapon in this whole fight, Because for me, the American dream is about living life on my own terms, regardless of who's going to give me what opportunities, And so we need to, because that's how they used to do it. That's how our ancestors did it all along. They didn't have much, but they made do with what they had, and they still had a sense of community, and they didn't self-destruct like we are doing now, So no matter how much money we are able to amass, until we have respect for our community, I don't know how much we're going to really gain from what it is that we're doing,
Okay. Aside from that, our next question was, how do you feel America is at its state at the moment? How do you feel it is going at the moment in this state?
People are trying to make it a lot harder for us. A lot harder for us. And there are so many examples of new policies that are being proposed that just make our efforts, you know, they'll require more effort from us to just, you know, maintain, you know. But one thing I think we need to recognize is that, you know, it would be so easy to just look at our president and say, you know, we just got to get rid of him, you know, and think that that's the end of it. But we need to understand that, you know, he's just a symptom of a larger problem. We get rid of him, and the next guy coming behind him could be just as bad or worse. The problem is an overall system, you know. You know, certain policies, certain, you know, the trajectory of this country hasn't really changed much from president to president. We're still engaged in these imperialistic wars. You know, we're still, you know, oppressing people who are already oppressed. You made great points about the mass incarceration problem. It's a crisis that is not getting better, but didn't just start 2 years ago. You know, this is a long-term problem that getting rid of one person is not going to address adequately at all. Not to mention the fact that, you know, a really close understanding of government would reveal that presidents really aren't the ones calling the shots anyway.
Yeah.
You know. Exactly. There's a lot of very powerful people influencing what goes on. They kind of stay, you know, behind the curtain, as it were. But, you know, so our problem is a lot deeper and a lot more systemic than what we're really, you know, led to believe if we just watch the daily news. You know, it's not just about one man. And so we need to learn how to marshal our resources. Again, going back to this whole concept of community, you know, there's power in numbers. And we forget that, you know. And we need to, you know, strategically think through this, stay together, and fight things on a more fundamental level, you know. So that's my initial take on it.
I mean, with the whole community thing, I just feel like different communities, it seems divided. You could live in the same community, but it'll be, say for example, I'm in a community that I live in, and I'll still be wrong if I walk down to another street that I'm not supposed to be on. So we all in one community, but yeah, we're all divided.
Yep. And you put your finger on the problem, I think. And it's easy. I mean, it is so easy to keep us down because the divide and conquer strategy has worked so well for so long, right?
I think it's a really good point, and it's kind of off topic, but I do want to make, you know, the point that we're basically being brainwashed by media on a daily basis. And when you have a whole community, whether it's minority or majority, black, white, whatever, if you have a whole community that's brainwashed, and like for the black community, for example, you know, we're taught, well, we're not taught necessarily, but in our media and the people we look up to, it glorifies sex, drugs, alcohol, you know, partying, this, that, and the other all the time. And then you look in the community of African Americans, generally in the urban cities, you see liquor stores on every corner. You have kids out here selling dope, you know, to try to survive. And you have people promoting sex or thinking, you know, this stuff is okay or that it's normal. In reality, it's not. And it honestly starts at the top because you have people at the top who we're looking up to who we shouldn't be, who say they care about their people so much and how they love the black community, this, that, and the other, but yet they sold out for a little bit of chump change and sell the entire community out and give them all this junk that they know that that everybody knows gets us nowhere and does nothing but hurt us rather than help us. And I think that's a really interesting point.
Okay, I just kind of thought about this. A question that I just thought of was comparing communities. Say the community in the 60s and 70s and then now, do you feel it's gotten worse?
No doubt. I mean, when I think of the way I grew up, I mean, I grew up in Cleveland, you know, but, you know, people looked out for each other, you know, and, you know, it was the kind of situation where everybody was, maybe because we were all like, you know, we were all black, you know, whether we were upper middle class or working class or whatever, you didn't see the kind of division that you see now. But, you know, what has happened is that, you know, the upper middle class moved out to the suburbs, leaving just, you know, a much less diverse population. And you don't have that same holistic sense of community that you used to have. But yeah, we used to all look out for each other. And, you know, the whole idea of a family, a village raising children, that really happened, you know. And you know, you go to neighborhood schools where your teachers went to church with you. Your teachers were the people that you saw at the grocery store. It was much more of a sense of community, and therefore much more of a sense of responsibility that each person had towards everybody else. You know. But we've lost that, whereas we've become a lot more atomistic, individualized. It's like every man for himself kind of thing, you know. And you know, younger people don't even really have an appreciation for how things used to be. So I'm so glad you asked that question. But I think that has been the chief difference, is that, you know, as I was saying, whether we're rich or poor, as long as you have a sense of community, then things can be okay. You know. Things can be okay. We need to sustain each other.
And it's tough, because when it's every man for themselves, it's like, I'm going to get mine, you can get yours on your own type of mentality. And then it's like we already have a whole other systematic thing going on to oppress us even more. So it's like everything just kind of goes down the gutter.
Yeah.
And the reason why that came up was, I know when I was on my way here, I saw a picture on social media of, it was two pictures split down. The top picture was a picture of MLK and the other guys that were with him, walking with their arms connected. And then the bottom picture was pictures of guys now with their pants, you know, all the way down and sagging like super low. And at the top it said, they took us serious then, but they laugh at us now.
Interesting.
And when I looked at that, I was thinking that it's kind of true, because you see that a lot more. You don't see the African American community coming together and being united like that anymore. And now, no matter where you go, you can easily see that. You can go down the street, you can go to a public square, and you see that a lot more. And it's not just here, just in America. You just see a lot more, you know, younger people just out on the street, or just, you know, skipping school, not going to school, just doing unnecessary things that, you know, it's just really putting a bad reputation on us, especially the young men at that. And it becomes a problem when they do that. But then when, say, a white person say, oh, they're pointing it out, they call a white person racist. Yeah, but that's not mistaken that yeah, some white people really do be racist, but they do it in a different way than how they did before. But when you constantly belittle yourself and give off that kind of image, how can you be mad at what a white person is saying about you when they're not speaking off of racism, they're just speaking off of ignorance.
And I feel like it's like our whole community is starting to look like a joke to everybody else, and now it's like we don't even take ourselves seriously. Not to stereotype us as a whole, because obviously it's not everyone, but there's people who just don't know and just go by what they see because maybe all they pay attention to is TV or music or something like that. And it's like the brainwashing is like ridiculous, and they give off a bad image just for all of us, and it's really bad.
Yeah, it's like we've lost our way.
Yeah.
5
Oh,
minutes.
okay.
Oh man, we could do this for a little while, couldn't we?
Yeah, I mean, if it came to my mind, I could honestly just keep talking, but I know we don't really have long, so I'll just end it now. Okay, again, this was Calvin Thomas, go ahead.
Jasmine Simpkins, sorry.
And Dr.
Sonia Siler.
Siler. And this was another open forum, and we will see you again on another video.
Thank you.